Now, many of you have asked about possibly making a video for students and teachers alike. Basically, the students in grade 6, 7 onwards who have probably started learning the basics of Excel. Now, Excel is also called a spreadsheet, and Excel is basically used for data analysis, storing information. You can store contact details, a lot of data, and do some analysis, do some visualizations, make some decisions, as long as you have informative data. Now, in this video series, I'll be covering some videos which would be rather related with students and teachers. So first and foremost, let me just explain the top part. This top part of the Excel screen is called the ribbon. Now, in the ribbon, you can see that you have File, Home, Insert, Page Layout, Formulas, Data, Review, View, Developer, Help, and Power Pivot. Now, these are basically called the tabs. So you can see that it is underlined here, which means that we are in the Home tab. If I click in the Insert tab, you see that now the underline is under the Insert word. So as I click on different tabs, you can see that the icons change. Each tab consists of many icons. Within the Home tab, you have groups. You have the clipboard group, you have the font group, you have the alignment group, the number group, the styles group, the cells group, the editing group, and the new one which has now been added, ideas. Within each group, you will find different icons that perform different functions. The most basic, which is copy, cut, paste, and the format painter. In the font group, you have bold, italic, underline, borders, changing the color background of the cell, changing the font of each color. You can increase the font size, decrease the font size. You can do that from here as well, and you can also change the font theme. In the alignment group, you can align your values to the left, to the right, to the center, and various different functions. So in this data set, I have student names, and I have the student numbers, the assignment, assignment 1, assignment 2, assignment 3, followed by the midterm exam, and then the final exam. Now, from the student's point of perspective, we would like to see that if you have 3 assignments before the midterm exam and before the final exam, how would you analyze your scores, and how would the teacher grade it at the final marks? You have the assignment 1, which has only a weightage of 5%. Assignment 2 has a weightage of 10%. Assignment 3 again has a weightage of 10%. And then as you move on towards the midterm exam, which has a higher weightage of 35%, and the final exam has a weightage of 40%. Now, if a student performs good in the first 3 assignments. That is, if he scores 25 out of 25 and 30 out of 30 and 40 out of 40, and if he fails in the midterm and in the final exam, what would the results be? So the last final mark will be calculated based on the weightage of the assignments and the midterm exams. So as you can see, the final exam and the midterm exam has a total weightage of 75%. The remaining 25% is made up of the 3 assignments. So let's go ahead and calculate the assignment 1 percentages. Now we have the students that are in the rows. We have around 25 students, and the marks are being judged for the subject of maths. So let's say the first student, Rahim Khan, with the student ID has scored 17 out of 25. The second student, which is Osman Mustafa, missed out on the first assignment and didn't turn it to the teacher, so he gets a 0. The third, Paul Henry, has scored 15 out of 25. So let's calculate this in percentage terms. So we will use a formula and we will precede it with an equal sign, and all formulas in Excel start with the equal sign. So we will divide 17 and we will use the slash, which is denoted for the divide function, divide by 25. So 17 divided by 25, let's press enter, and that gives us a 68%. Now if I drag this formula down, what happens in Excel? The cell reference changes automatically. As we drag a cell down, the reference changes. So in the first cell, we can see D6, which is column D, row D, that's D6 divided by D2, which is column D and row number 2. Now all these numbers need to be divided by just one number, which is 25. So the common number is 25. So in this case, what we need to do here is we need to divide all these numbers by 25 and have a mechanism where we can lock this cell. So let's click on this cell, which is D6, divide by D2, and we need to lock this cell. So we can do so using the function key on our keyboard, which is F4. If I click on F4, you can see that Excel places dollar signs. The dollar sign before D means that column D is locked, and the dollar sign before the number 2 means that row number 2 is now locked. So having both the signs, both the dollar signs, means that this cell is now locked. Let's press enter and let's drag our formulas down, and we can see that we have the percentages for each student. Now if I click on any of the middle cells, you can see that the cell reference is now showing for D18, but the D2, which is the total mark, is still locked. So our cell D2 is still locked, and we have used the dollar signs before the column and before the row. So let's go ahead and perform the calculations for the percentages for assignment 2 equals this cell divide by cell F2, and we will use the F4 function key, which is also called absolute reference, and absolute meaning that this cell is now locked using the dollar sign before the column and the dollar sign before the row. So we have locked the cell. We will press enter and let's drag our formula. Let's do the same for assignment 3, and I'm using the left arrow key on my keyboard. Divide by cell H2 using function F4 key to lock this. Press enter and let's drag our formula. Let's do the same for the midterm. Divide by cell J2, click on F4, press enter, and let's also do this for the final exams. Divide by cell L2, click on F4, press enter. So we can see that we have already populated our final mark. I will delete this so I can explain. So now to understand this, we can see that Rahim Khan has performed 68% in assignment 1, 57% in assignment 2, 55% in assignment 3, 62% in the midterm, and 88% in the final exam. Whereas the rest of the students, some have scored more than 90, some are below 50, and if you see row number 20, which belongs to Mike Ramos, he scored 80% in assignment 1, he scored 100% in assignment 2, 73% in assignment 3, and in the midterm he scored 70%, and in the final exam a very low score of 48%. So what would the average or the weighted average be? He has been scoring consistently, but in the final exam, where the weightage is out of 40%, what would his average be? So let's go ahead and calculate this, and I will use an equal sign again. I'll open a bracket and we will take 68%, which is for the first assignment. We will multiply this by the weightage of the first assignment. And remember, now we need to lock this, because once I drag the formula down, this cell reference will go down. So we need to lock this range. I'll click on F4. Let's close the bracket. That's for the first assignment. I'll use a plus sign to add for the second assignment. Open the bracket. Assignment number 2, multiply by, and we will take assignment number 2 weightage. Use F4 to lock this. Close the bracket. Use another plus sign. Let's open a bracket for the third assignment. 55% multiply by the weightage of the third assignment. Let's lock this as well using F4, plus let's go for the midterm exam. 62% multiply by, and the weightage for the midterm exam is 35%. Let's lock this using F4, and for the last and final exam, let's take the percentage, which is in cell M6. So you can't see cell M6 because of the formula, because of the long formula. So what I've done is I've used my arrow keys to go up. Let's multiply this by the weightage, which is 40%. F4 to lock it. Let's close the bracket, and now let's press enter, and we get 71%. Now it's important to note that the total weightage should add up to 100%. So for the final exam, 40, for the midterm 35, which is 75, and then the remaining are for the assignments. So we can see that the weighted average for this student is 71%. Let's drag our formula down and let's see who has been consistently scoring. So if I look at the numbers and if I look at the status bar below, you can see that we have the maximum showing as 97%. So if I look for 97%, this belongs to row number 14, which is for Iman Mustafa, and she has scored 100% in assignment 1, 100% in assignment 2, 98% in assignment 3, another 100% in the midterm, and then 93% in the final exam, bringing the weighted average to 97%. So in other words, for a student to get a good weighted average, basically the person needs to score consistently throughout all the assignments as well as the midterm and the final exam. In case a person goes below under par in any one of the assignments, that will affect your final weighted average. So the weighted average, when you compute the weighted average based on different weightages on assignments and marks, gives you an indication how the student has been performing throughout the year. So 97 is a very good weighted average, and basically anything above 80 and 85% shows that the student has been performing consistently throughout the year. So I hope you found this video useful, and in the other coming videos we will be talking about the tabs, the groups, and we would be also doing some further analysis on the students.